The old Blackwood Manor stood at the end of a weed-choked driveway, skeleton of Victorian grandeur against a bruised twilight sky. To the 7 teenagers gathered at its iron gate, it was not a tomb, but a trophy, a rite of passage. There was Liam, the de facto leader, his girlfriend Chloe, the jittery joker, Mark, the skeptical Sarah, and the twins, Jake and Noah, followed by the quietly courageous Maya. They were armed with backpacks full of snacks, phone flashlights, and the invincible arrogance of youth. The front door, a massive slab of oak, was unlocked. It swung inward with a groan that sounded like a wounded animal, releasing a breath of air that was thick with the smell of dust. Dry rot and something else underneath, a faint sweet odor of decay like forgotten meat. The interior was a time capsule of faded opulence. A grand staircase swept upwards into darkness. Portraits of severe-looking men and pale women hung crooked on the walls, their eyes seeming to track the beams of the flashlights. Cobwebs draped the chandeliers like funeral shrouds. For the first hour, it was fun. They laughed too loudly, their voices swallowed by the oppressive silence of the house. They dared each other to open closet doors, flinching at the empty darkness within. It was Maya who first voiced the unease. "Guys, does it feel like it's getting smaller?" The rooms did seem to be contracting, the hallways stretching longer than they should. The air grew colder, the sweet meaty smell stronger. Mark, trying to recapture the mood, jokingly scratched at the floral-patterned wallpaper in the upstairs hallway. Maybe the previous owner is still here, is hiding in the walls? A moment later, he was gone. They had been moving from a bedroom to a study. Mark was at the back of the group, making another joke. There was a soft rustling sound, like dry leaves shifting. A faint, sharp intake of breath. When they turned, the hallway behind them was empty. His flashlight lay on the floor, its beam casting a lonely circle on the dusty runner. Panic, cold and immediate, shattered their bravado. "Mark, this isn't funny," Liam's voice wavered. Only silence answered, a silence that now felt heavy and watchful. Then, the noises began. It started as a faint scratching. It seemed to come from inside the walls, a slow, deliberate scraping, like something long and sharp being dragged across the inner lath and plaster. It would move from one side of the hallway to the other, then travel up towards the ceiling. They stood frozen, a tight little knot of terror, their flashlights darting over the walls like frantic fireflies. A low, wet gurgle echoed from a heating vent near the floor, followed by a series of clicks, the sound of a monstrous tongue clacking against needle-sharp teeth. They ran. Not as a group, but as a scattered herd, their unity broken. Liam and Chloe bolted down the main hallway towards the staircase. Sarah and the twins fled into a side room. Maya, paralyzed for a moment, was left alone in the hall. The scratching in the walls became frenzied, keeping pace with their footfalls. From the room where Sarah and the twins had fled, a scream tore through the house. Sarah's. It was cut off with a wet, crunching finality. The sound was followed by a frantic scrabbling noise, and then a series of thick, heavy drags across the floorboards moving towards the walls. A section of the wallpaper bulged outward momentarily, as if something large was being pulled through the structure of the house itself, before settling back into place. Maya, sobbing silently, pressed herself into a shadowed alcove. She watched as the thing emerged. It didn't come from a door. A section of the wall in the hallway split open with a sound of tearing paper and splintering wood. It was a ghoul, but unlike any from storybooks. It was unnaturally tall and emaciated, its skin the color and texture of old parchment, stretched taut over a twisted skeleton. Its limbs were long and multi-jointed, ending in fingers that were essentially foot-long, razor-sharp claws of yellowed bone. It had no eyes, just deep black sockets, but its head swiveled on its neck, sniffing the air through a slit where a nose should have been. Its mouth was a wide, lipless gash, dripping with a black, viscous saliva, reeked of the grave. It was the source of the sweet, rotting smell. It was the true resident of Blackwood Manor. The house wasn't its home, it was its larder. The ghoul tilted its head, listening. It took a step towards the alcove, its claws scraping deep grooves into the hardwood floor. Maya held her breath, tears streaming down her face, certain she was about to die. But a crash from the grand foyer below drew the creature's attention. Liam and Chloe, in their flight, had knocked over a suit of armor. With a guttural hiss, the ghoul turned and melted back into the wall, the opening sealing behind it as if it had never been. Maya didn't wait. She ran in the opposite direction, deeper into the heart of the mansion, away from the foyer, away from the thing in the walls. Downstairs, Liam and Chloe reached the front door. They pulled on the handle, but it was immovable, as if welded shut. The windows they passed were similarly sealed, the glass behind them not clear, but a swirling, opaque blackness. They were trapped. The house was keeping its food inside. A section of the wainscoting in the foyer exploded outwards. The ghoul unfolded itself, its form blocking their path to the rest of the house. It moved with a horrifying, spider-like grace, its claws clicking on the marble floor. Chloe screamed, a raw, primal sound of utter despair. Liam shoved her behind him, grabbing a piece of the fallen armor, a short, decorative sword, rusted and dull. "Stay back." The ghoul seemed almost amused. It lunged. Liam swung the sword. The blade connected with the creature's arm with a dull thud, not cutting it, but merely annoying it. A backhanded swipe of a claw sent Liam flying across the foyer. He hit the wall with a sickening crack and slid to the floor, motionless. Chloe stood alone, her flashlight trembling in her hand, illuminating the horror as it advanced on her. She could see now that the creature's parchment-like skin was covered in faint, barely visible script, as if it were a thing made of damned poetry and forgotten names. It reached for her, not with speed, but with a terrible, inevitable slowness. Her final scream was not one of fear, but of heartbreak, for Liam, for herself, for all of them. The claws closed around her waist. The pressure was immense. It was a final gasping breath, and then darkness. In the depths of the house, Maya had found a dead end, a small, windowless library. She barricaded the door with a heavy desk, her body shaking uncontrollably. She could hear it all, the final scream. Then, the slow, deliberate footsteps of the ghoul returning to its walls. The scratching started again, this time right outside the library door. It was playing with her. It knew she was the last. The scratching stopped. A new sound began, soft, wet chewing sound. It was coming from the other side of the door, low to the ground. A dark red-brown liquid began to seep slowly under the doorframe, spreading in a viscous pool across the old Persian rug. In the center of the spreading stain, something small and metallic glinted. It was the friendship bracelet she had given Chloe for her birthday. Maya sank to her knees, her mind retreating into a catatonic shell, the tears drying on her face as a profound, unimaginable horror crushed her spirit. The scratching at the door started again, this time more insistent. The wood in the center of the door began to splinter. A single, yellowed, bone-white claw tip pierced through, wiggling, probing, searching for the last morsel in its ancient, terrible home.